Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where in the world you are sitting and watching this presentation. I'm going to present you our results of our study that compare the reasons for retraction between women and men authors. So we know that women are underrepresented among the authors of scientific papers, and this has been demonstrated across a broad range of scientific disciplines. But whether the same applies to retracted papers was not known and up to then. And actually, we know that there has been a steady increase in the number of retracted papers every year. And these may reflect either more issues with research integrity or simply the reason that we are better able at capturing the retracted papers than previously. So that was the aim of this study, to try to understand whether there are any gender differences among authors of retracted papers. And we used the database of the RetractionWatch, and we are very grateful for their help. And we looked at about 65,000 articles and extracted data for the first names of the first and last authors, and then assigned the gender based on their first names using the Gender API software. We then estimated the percentage of retractions that could be attributed to women and men as first and last authors, and used the binomial regression to test whether that was different from 50%. Finally, we looked at compared the representation of women among authors of retracted papers with their representation as authors of papers in general, both as first and last authors. And this is what we found. So women or the reasons for retraction were different between women and men authors. And for the first and last authors, we also saw some differences. So when we consider the lowest representation of women, it was for ethical or legal issues, both as first and last authors. And the most common reason for first authors was errors from editor or publisher. And for last authors, it was where is it? Plagiarism, which we saw there as the second row of the forest chart. So this is important because you have there in dashed lines the representation of women as first authors about 40% and as last authors about 30%. And we can see that their representation is overall lower than their representation in scientific papers. And what this may suggest is that women abide more than men to the principles of research ethics and integrity. And so we can imagine that if we had a level playing field and women were represented as they should with gender equality, then probably would have fewer retracted papers, or at least a different distribution of reasons, with less retractions due to fraud and misconduct, or errors from the authors. And what we hypothesize is that these may be due to different pressures on women and men as scientists. And we know that in a very competitive publishing environment, there is a lot of pressure, let's use the word pressure, to publish or perish. And sometimes people may cut corners and end up with retracted papers, as we saw when we tried to produce research at pace during the COVID pandemic. So thanks for your attention, and I would be delighted to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you very much for giving us such a clear and nice presentation, important topic, and for keeping time so wonderfully well. John, you're ready for the first question. There you go.
Very nice presentation. I'm wondering whether your results are confounded by the fact that the corpus of retractions is missing some retractions that have not been entered into RetractionWatch. I mean, there's always some backlog, plus the fact that retractions take a number of years to occur. So in a way, it's a little bit like seeing what was happening several years earlier, as opposed to authorship in papers, where I guess you have a complete data set that includes everything from the most recent years, where we know that women are becoming better represented. So we've seen that in many disciplines, they're already at 50%, some even more than 50%. But clearly there's an improvement in representation of women over time. So that, that bias would tend to show that we'll have fewer women in retracted papers because on average, they're older papers. The same might apply also to the reasons for the retraction, because I think there may be some change over time in what is the profile of retractions. I'm less certain about that, but it's something that's pretty easy to look into and see whether there's one reason that increases over time or decreases over time, along with the other change that happens in women's representation.
Thank you very much for your question. The first thing is, I completely acknowledge the limitations, and Ahmad also mentioned the issue of not having a complete data set, and the dichotomy of gender is no longer the best approach, but the issue, it's impossible to know the gender when it's non-binary, or for certain names. So we use the 80% cutoff for gender accuracy of the prediction. And in terms of missing the most recent, or missing some papers, retracted papers, it's unlikely that the RetractionWatch has a filter that only allows retracted papers from men to be logged on. So it's very possible to have to be missing some papers, but I would say it's unlikely that there is that the differences between genders are due to that, because if it would be an issue of non-differential misclassification or of some sort, so it wouldn't be different. It's similarly likely to be missing papers from men and women. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you. Maybe a lot of you are a bit jet lagged. Where are your questions? No one is coming up to the microphone, but give me the opportunity to give another one. Anna Katarina, a guy called Ivan Oransky, he might even be in the room, once wrote in Nature that only one or even maybe only 1 in 20 papers that should be retracted actually is retracted. And that might be another potential explanation of your findings. Maybe papers by women are scrutinized less, or maybe women are just more clever of not being caught. What do you think?
I prefer the second reason.
Yeah, I was expecting that.
Yeah, but that again, I agree. There is a lot of papers that should be retracted and are not retracted. And actually, I would probably think the opposite, because what we have from other studies is that men tend to be a lot more self-confident than women. And so, if there are issues, I think women would be more likely to be upfront, recognizing that there are errors in their papers rather than. But again, if we assume that that's a reason, then we need to understand what are the justifications to have women or men more likely to acknowledge fraud or integrity issues that end up, or errors that lead to retractions.
Well, thank you. I fear that you're right. There's one question there. Please go ahead.
Hi, Julia Gunn. I work at Taylor and Francis. I was wondering how effective or accurate you found these name identification tools to be, particularly in accurately identifying names that are not Western. I think, or at least in my experience, I've tried out some of these tools in trying to parse out race, and I found them to be pretty inaccurate. And so I was just wondering what your thoughts are on how they've dealt with non-Western names or names more generally globally.
Yeah, that's always an issue, particularly with Asian names, such as Chinese or Thai names. But the gender API is actually the best of the gender softwares. It's much better than others like Genderize, because it relies on names that are available on the internet and on social media, etc. And actually, Asian names are reasonably well represented in that source. And if it was now, probably I would have used the LLMs, because they seem to perform very well in terms of gender estimation based on names.
Thank you. There is one more last question. Please go ahead.
Hello, I'm Michael Mensom from Yale University. Great presentation, appreciate it. I wanted to know if you had the access to the subfield or the discipline in that from which the retracted article came, and whether what your feeling is as to whether gender representation within that subfield could account for gender differences in retraction rates that you reported today.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, there is a field in the database about the subject, but it is not coded, so it's not clean. That's what I mean. it's there is a lot of disciplines in the same cell in Excel, so we would have to look at that and explore that. But again, it's unlikely that that justifies the differences that we found, because it shouldn't affect the percentage of women. They would be more represented in some subjects than in others, but it shouldn't explain these the results are very stark. The differences when women account for 20% of the authors, it's unlikely. But you are right, their representation as first authors may not be 40%, and it's definitely not 40% in all disciplines. For instance, in physics and mathematics and those type of those sciences, it's their representation is lower, but it would be higher in humanities, and so probably that evens out in the end. That's what I assume.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you very much. And please feel free to send me an email if you want to connect or discuss this at a later stage. Thank you.
Well, thank you.